Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing wonderfully well. Today I carry on with my monthly series where I talk about the best films I watched in the preceding month, and today we tackle my August in film. August was I think my busiest month for films all year so far, and I watched a grand total of 39. It was helped on a little bit because I was a bit under the weather and off work for a few days at the start of the month, and that's always something that I try to take advantage of by watching some of the much longer films sat in my collection, which I also find makes being sick a little bit more bearable. I also managed to have a great trip out to the cinema for the first time in quite a few months, which was really wonderful, and I saw Alien Romulus, which I was really pleasantly surprised by and enjoyed quite a bit, and it was really great to see it on the big screen. Well, as this was a bigger month of films for me, we have a bit of a longer video today, so I have put timestamps in the description down below if you'd like to jump around. But that is more than enough of my rambling, so let's get right into it and talk about the best films I watched in August. First up is Starship Troopers. From 1997 and directed by Paul Verhoeven, it stars Casper Van Dien, Dina Meyer, Denise Richards, Neil Patrick Harris, Jake Busey, Clancy Brown, Michael Ironside, and the list just goes on. I'd been really wanting to revisit this one for a while, but unfortunately the 4K isn't available in the UK for some reason. But I was lucky enough to be able to import this edition from the States, and I had an absolute blast revisiting it. I remember in particular when I first watched this one how the ending really hit me and made me appreciate this for what it is, which is a superb satire. It works so incredibly well, like a propaganda piece itself, as it hits on all the right emotional notes to get you on their side, so much so that I think we often comment too harshly that people didn't see it at the time. Of course, when it came out, it was critically panned for seeming to promote fascism, whereas of course it's easy to see now, when of course we already know, that this is actually a scathing anti-fascism piece. I'd liken this one to a space soap opera. It is rampant with over-the-top melodrama, cheesy acting and line delivery, with actors who are almost too ridiculously good-looking, and it's all just judged to perfection by Verhoeven. This story takes our characters from high school to training to battle-hardened veterans who go about gaining success and experience in the military and trying to defeat the enemy. A good bug is a dead bug. Of course, an enemy they know nothing about, except that they are taught to hate them. And I just want to quickly mention an incredible novel that I read recently called The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, which really blew me away. It was written following his experiences in Vietnam, and it's a sci-fi classic that uses the medium to really shine a light on the insanity of warfare. And I just happened to be reading it at the same time that I revisited Starship Troopers, and I just think they make some fantastic companion pieces if you're interested, as they both share a lot of similarities in heavily critiquing war. Overall, Starship Troopers is just a glorious work, and I think it's a powerful warning to remind us of how easily the media can manipulate us. And I think also importantly, how winning the minds of kids while they're at school is one of the most dangerous tools that oppressive regimes can use. There is an absolutely brilliant scene towards the end of the film where the squad receives reinforcements and they all look so young, being probably that they are actually teenagers, rather than the late 20-something actors who are, of course, hilariously playing teenagers in the film. And it's a really moving moment because you already know the sad fate that probably awaits them. Unironically though, the special effects and the soundtrack are absolutely wonderful here. The space scenes still look fantastic, and the rousing military themes were beautifully composed. It's an excellent film that reminds us that while our politics can seem dire at times, my goodness, things could be worse. Up next, and we have The Invisible Life of Euridice Gusmao. It's a film from 2019 and directed by Karim Aynous, and it stars Julia Stockler and Carol Duarte as our main characters. And Duarte is actually the reason that I sought this one out after seeing her great performance in the recent film La Chimera, which just released earlier this year, where she stars alongside Josh O'Connor. This was magnificent and a triumph. The story was utterly captivating and enrapturing, and for a film that's well over 2 hours, I could easily have watched another 2 hours of it. Are you in the mood to have your heart ripped out? Well, if you are, then boy do I have the film for you, because this is a brutal story. It's a story about family, about life, and about our dreams. And the main tool that it uses is the concept of family shame. How bringing shame upon the family in the sight of other people, and also to a certain extent going against the cultural flow and tradition, can all lead to catastrophic consequences. It's set in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, mostly in the 1950s, but we do watch the progression of time in this one as the years go by. And we watch the lives of these two sisters, Euridice and Guida, as the choices that they make funnel them down very specific paths of life. I did read in someone else's review of it that this more or less reflects the main two choices that women had in Brazil at the time, and each of them has their own troubling consequences. Do you follow the traditional path, sometimes at the cost of your own dreams, or do you strike out on your own, perhaps at the cost of friends or family? I have a lot to say about this one, about the injustices that you see, about the emotional roller coaster that it takes you on, but I don't really want to talk any further specifics about the story, as I think this one is a great one to go into with little knowledge and just enjoy the discovery of it. I'll just say that it's rare that a story and a set of characters captures my imagination as much as they did here. I remember I had a similar experience watching Amadeus for the first time many years ago, where I was so captivated I just forgot about the rest of the world. It was like I wasn't watching a film, but like I was in it, and you wish you could stay in it for longer. And it was just incredible to have a similar experience here with this amazing work. It is transporting and immersive and exquisitely done, featuring stellar performances from both of the actors playing the sisters, as well as the supporting cast here. Just astonishing stuff that I could not recommend more highly. Next up is The Chalk Garden. From 1964 and directed by Ronald Neame, this one stars real-life father and daughter with John Mills and Hayley Mills, though they aren't playing family in this one, as well as Deborah Kerr, who you might recognise from the films of Powell and Pressburger, like Black Narcissus and The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, and Edith Evans, who I enjoyed quite a lot recently as the mother from The Importance of Being Earnest. So all in all, a pretty stellar cast here. Well, like I seem to say all too often, I wish I had gotten to this one sooner, as it had been sat on my shelf for well over a year. This was another film that I just found utterly captivating. I was so thoroughly engaged in this story, which is just a small melodrama really, but one with incredible actors all delivering great performances, with enough mystery to keep you wondering what's going to happen next, and curious about how things will turn out. We start with a woman, played by Deborah Kerr, that seems calm, confident, collected, and seemingly unflappable, where in any situation you get the sense that she would have it all under control and just take things in her stride. And she applies to be a governess to a troubled child. But is she really all that she seems? Or is it just a facade? Hayley Mills plays the young teenage girl here, and she is absolutely unhinged for a large part of this in the most hilariously childish way. She exaggerates as only children can, and delivers the brilliantly written dialogue from Enid Bagnold and John Michael Hayes, such as saying that former governesses were eaten by sharks, or how she wants to burn the house down, which was then followed by a glorious scene which I won't spoil, but let's just say that it would fit perfectly in films like Hal Ashby's Harold and Maude. Yet unlike that darker comedy, there is a more gentle heart to this one. In some ways this one actually reminded me a bit of Good Will Hunting, as it's really a child coming to terms with some emotional trauma, which was fueled by familial breakdown and perpetuated to some extent by those around her, at least until she has the chance to change with the arrival of this new governess. As you might expect, this is a bumpy ride at times, but overall a brilliant and touching one. It has shades of darkness, intrigue, but with some moments that will truly warm your heart. It is a fantastic mixture of these elements, and a truly wonderful film. Moving on, and we have Cadejo Blanco, a film from 2021, though actually just released here in the UK for the first time last month. It's directed by Justin Lerner, and stars Karen Martinez, Brandon Lopez, Yolanda Coronado, Pamela Martinez, and Rodolgo Rodriguez. I came across this one on Curzon Home Cinema just shortly before my subscription ended, and I was looking at what I could watch in the last few days, and this one just caught my attention. Before I get into my thoughts, I'll just quickly say that I found it interesting that this film has some fairly mixed reviews, and certainly not everyone thinks as highly of it as I do. But I was swept away in this story, and amazed in particular by the astonishing and captivating central performance of Karen Martinez. This one is set in Guatemala, and it's another film about two sisters, except in this case, one of them goes missing. And the film then follows the remaining sister as she goes on a desperate and dangerous journey trying to find her, or at least find out what happened to her. It's a film that is sombre, hard and bloody. There is some shocking and gritty violence in this one, and there are some scenes that boil with tension. It's very much a film about Guatemalan gangs and the gang culture there, and we see this young woman forced to get involved in order to get some answers. And we meet the other young people who have become wrapped up in the gangs as well, and the consequences that come with that. There is one scene in particular which I found really powerful, where two men have just been murdered and left on the street like carrion, and you are looking at one of the young men responsible. Now, it's a quiet scene where, to begin with, they're just sat around waiting and there isn't any chatter, and the scene breathes and I think gives you time to think and reflect. And I was just sat there thinking to myself, he surely deserves to die. It isn't the first act of unmitigated and unprovoked savage violence that we've seen from him, and I was thinking, how many more horrors is he going to commit? The world would be better off without him. He is remorseless and seemingly sociopathic. But then, almost on cue, he tells a story about when he was growing up. He says there was this young rough on his estate, and one day that young rough was killed, and all the adults celebrated, and the police didn't care. And he says, you, me, no one will care. Life is cheap in Barrow. They will be glad we're dead. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was immediately convicted about what I'd been thinking, and I think this is something that this film also does so incredibly well, as it calls you out on your own assumptions as you watch these events unfold. As I mentioned already, Karen Martinez, who is our main character here, is just a revelation and gives probably the best performance I've seen in any film all year. It's absolutely magnificent. She plays a stoic character that is prepared to risk enormously and put everything on the line to find her sister, and you completely buy into every step. She really carries the film on her shoulders and manages to draw you in and keep you with her through everything she does. It's just incredible to watch. There was also some amazing camera work here. There's not a lot of Steadicam, that's for sure, and the cinematography makes you feel like you are right there alongside and in the action, almost like you are an active participant, and it was just brilliantly done. This one is a slow burn film, but one that keeps you engaged in the overall mystery and journey, anchored by amazing performances, and definitely highly recommended from me. And then lastly we have Suzhou River, a film from the year 2000 and directed by Lao Ye and starring Zhao Jun and Jia Hongshen as our main characters. This was absolutely superb and another winner from Radiance. It was one that I was interested in, but I didn't actually pick it up until it went on sale, and my goodness, I'm so glad that I decided to. It's a film that has this wonderful air of mystery and intrigue mixed with an almost neo-noir tinge in some ways, which just gives it this brilliant atmosphere. It's stylised, it's engaging, and it keeps you guessing. It's a film which sort of starts out as one thing, turns into something else, and then turns into something else yet again, all the while keeping you incredibly engaged as it tells a very tight story in only about 80 minutes. There are some first-person shots in this one, and that's actually something that I really dislike. Perhaps it belongs in Peep Show, but to be honest, I've never been a fan of it anywhere else. Thankfully though, that doesn't continue throughout, so if you're like me, definitely don't let that put you off, because this is well worth your time. It's really a fairly simple story, but a captivating one, about the love of a man whose girlfriend goes missing, and it's about his ongoing search to try to find her again. In that search, he also gets wrapped up in another couple's relationship, altering it forever. Now, this film gets a lot of comparisons to Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Vertigo for what must be 11 or 12 years, so I can't really comment on the similarities between them. Though you'll be glad to hear that I have now opened my 4K copy that I picked up a while back, and I'll definitely get to a rewatch soon. Particularly because I remember loving it the first time, and I also loved Suzhou River, so it bodes well for a rewatch. But I'll be interested to see what comparisons I draw. Despite any similarities in the story though, this feels like very much its own thing. There is a more gritty feel to it, and it actually reminded me a little bit of the cinematography of Nicholas Winding Refn's Pusher, with that similar guerrilla style, as lots of it is shot on the streets of Shanghai. There is no steady cam at work here, and it's all very grainy. It all contributes wonderfully to this murky story, and much like the Suzhou River itself, it will pull you along on its course, but you can never quite see what's beneath you, and you are never sure what the truth really is. But it's a fantastic ride. And well, that then brings us on to my next section, where I talk about any films that I haven't quite made my mind upon yet, whether they were particularly curious or mysterious or just intriguing in some way. And this month I have two falling into that category. The first is Typhoon Club, which I was lucky enough to pick up shortly before it sold out. It's from 1985 and directed by Shinji Somai, starring Yuki Kudo, Yuichi Mikami, Yuka Onaishi, Tomoyasu Miura, Saburo Date, and the list goes on. I'm still not really sure what to make of this one. It was not at all what I was expecting, but actually was something much darker, but flavoured, if you will, with the exuberance of youth. It has elements of flirting with disaster, but also has the insanity of puberty, that wild lust and passion that can be angered when unrequited, alongside the easy violence of youth, and the willingness to forget things that are difficult. So safe to say, not the easygoing school drama or comedy that I was expecting for no good reason really, but I did buy it shortly after watching the wonderful Japanese school comedy called Linda Linda Linda, which I can highly recommend, but my goodness, this was a very different take on a secondary school experience. As I was reading about this film afterwards, I saw the director uses water and rain as a metaphor for emotions coming pouring out. And as most of this film is set during a typhoon, it's almost like the madness of childhood is just pouring out of every corner. This was definitely a strange watch. It was riveting enough for sure, but I did find it a bit emotionally baffling. And that brings me on to the second interesting and curious watch, which was another Japanese film called The Ballad of Narayama. It's from 1983 and directed by Shohei Imamura, and it stars Ken Ogata, Sumiko Sakamoto, Tonpei Hidari, Aki Takeyo, and Mitsuoko Baisho, among several others. This was a title I was really lucky to pick up last year, as it's long out of print from the Masters of Cinema line. This is only the second film by Imamura that I've seen, but similar to the first, it again tackles difficult themes and is a tough watch. Really, this one is pretty horrible, and it reminds me of films like Paths of Glory and Los Olvidados, because I feel like these films are all important and powerful works, but none of them are films that you enjoy. They are more like films you endure. This one is about the savagery and brutality of peasant life in Japan, set sometime during the 19th century. It's a film that focuses very much on family, subsistence and community living, and where you must do what is necessary to maintain the balance of things, even when the necessary is horrible and cruel or terrible. It's undoubtedly a captivating work, brilliantly made and very well acted, but it's a brutal story that will definitely linger with you. And lastly then, that brings us on to my honourable mentions, and after watching 39 films in total, I have quite a few, as you might imagine. First up is Around the World in 80 Days, the one with Steve Coogan and Jackie Chan, which is a film I loved as a teenager, and that we watched as a family many times. I haven't actually seen it since then, but I had an awful lot of fun watching it again, and it still made me laugh out loud on many occasions. It's just a shame that it flops quite hard in the last quarter of the film, which just all feels very rushed and might leave you feeling that it was worse than it actually was, but I still had a great time. Then we have three that I'll mention together, all from 88 films. Twin Dragons, Dragons Forever and the Iceman Cometh. I've had an absolute blast making my way through my first Kung Fu films I've bought from 88. These were all a huge amount of fun and the editions themselves are lovely. I bought Twin Dragons because I thought I had seen it growing up and I wanted to revisit it. Straight afterwards though, I knew it wasn't the one I'd been thinking of, though I think I still might have seen it as a teenager. But I decided to buy Dragons Forever immediately, as I figured maybe that one is the one that I actually remembered. And after watching it, well, it turns out that wasn't the one either, so my search continues. But as I say, these are all enormous fun, full of comedy and kick-ass action. Needless to say that I'll be picking up many more of their Kung Fu titles now. Then we have Soul Food, which was a touching family drama. And next is Wings, which I'd been looking forward to watching for ages, and it was fantastic, incredibly shot for the time and just a standout of silent cinema. Up next is River, a film from the same people as other great Japanese time travel comedies like Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, and I enjoyed this one a lot. And lastly then we have The Spy in Black, which I hadn't heard of before until Solitary Ronin mentioned it in a couple of his videos, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. A collaboration of Powell and Pressburger, and actually available to stream for free on ITVX at the moment. And well, that brings us to the end of the video and my August in film. I hope you also had a wonderful summer month of August, or indeed winter month if you happen to be in the southern hemisphere. Hopefully you were able to enjoy the weather and some great watches, and I hope your September is also going wonderfully well. Well, that is everything from me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.